The Lowndes County teen's body was discovered in a rolled-up mat in a high school gym back in 2013.
The Lowndes County Sheriff is investigating new possible evidence in the case of a teen found dead in a high school gym.
This story has gained nationwide attention.
On a cold January morning in 2013, inside a quiet high school gym in Valdosta, Georgia, a discovery was made that would create one of the most controversial mysteries in modern American true crime. A teenager was found dead. But it wasn't just the death itself that shocked people, it was where they found him. 16-year-old Kendrick Johnson was discovered trapped upside down inside a rolled-up wrestling mat in the old gymnasium of Lowndes High School. At first glance, investigators believed they understood what happened. They said it was a tragic accident, a teenager trying to reach his shoe, climbing into a tightly rolled mat, becoming stuck, and dying because he could not escape. A heartbreaking accident, a terrible mistake. A case that should have ended there, but almost immediately, questions began to appear. Questions that would divide a community. Questions that would turn a small-town tragedy into a national debate. How could a 16-year-old boy climb into a mat that was barely large enough to fit a person? Why were some details from the investigation questioned by Kendrick's family? Why did some people believe the evidence pointed towards something much darker? And why, more than a decade later, are people still arguing about what really happened inside that gym? The story of Kendrick Johnson is not just about a teenager who died. It is about a family searching for answers. It is about a community split between believing the official explanation and demanding another investigation. It is about rumors, missing evidence, conflicting reports, and the difficult reality of trying to uncover the truth when the facts become buried under years of controversy. Because sometimes the hardest cases to solve are not the ones where nobody knows what happened. Sometimes the hardest cases are the ones where everyone believes they already know. On January 10th, 2013, Kendrick Johnson walked into Lowndes High School like he had done hundreds of times before. He was a normal teenager. He had friends, he played sports, he had a family who expected him to come home that afternoon. Nothing about that morning suggested that it would be the last time they would ever see him alive. The gym was a familiar place, a place where students gathered, a place where athletes trained. A place filled with ordinary sounds, sneakers hitting the floor, conversations between classmates, the movement of everyday school life. But by the end of the day, that same gym would become the center of one of America's most debated mysteries. The official story would say Kendrick made a fatal mistake. His family would say they believed something much more serious happened. And the space between those two versions would become a battlefield of investigations, accusations, and unanswered questions. As the years passed, the case would attract attention from national media, online investigators, and millions of people following the details from around the world. Some believed the truth had already been found. Others believed the truth had been hidden. And somewhere between those two sides was a question that remains haunting. What really happened to Kendrick Johnson? To understand why this case became so controversial, we have to go back to the beginning. Back before the headlines, back before the theories, back before Kendrick Johnson became a name known across America. We have to look at the life of a teenager who was much more than a mystery. He was a son, a brother, a friend, and someone whose story would change the lives of everyone who knew him. The discovery of Kendrick Johnson inside the old gym at Lowndes High School immediately changed the atmosphere of the entire school. Only hours earlier, the building had been filled with ordinary school activity. Students moving between classes, athletes preparing for practice, teachers following their daily routines. But after emergency responders arrived, the gym became the center of a tragedy that nobody expected. According to authorities, Kendrick was found inside a rolled-up wrestling mat in the old gym. The situation was unusual from the very beginning. A teenager had died inside a school building, and investigators had to determine exactly how it happened. The first priority was to understand the scene. Officials examined the gym. They documented the equipment. They collected available information from people who had been nearby. At that moment, investigators did not publicly identify evidence of an attack. There were no confirmed witnesses who reported seeing Kendrick being harmed. There was no immediate suspect. Based on the information available at the time, authorities began treating the case as a possible accident. The Lowndes County Sheriff's Office became responsible for the investigation. Detectives began reconstructing Kendrick's final hours. They looked at his schedule, they spoke with students and staff, they reviewed what was known about his movements throughout the school day. The goal was to create a timeline, to understand where Kendrick had been before entering the gym, and to determine what happened between his last known moments and the discovery of his body. Investigators focused heavily on the circumstances surrounding the wrestling mat. The official explanation was that Kendrick had climbed inside the mat while attempting to retrieve his shoe. According to this theory, the shoe had fallen into the opening of the rolled-up mat. Kendrick entered headfirst to reach it. He then became trapped and was unable to escape. The position of his body caused him to suffer from positional asphyxia, a condition where a person's body position interferes with their ability to breathe. For investigators, this explanation matched the evidence they had at the time. The death was later classified as accidental, but the investigation was not viewed the same way by everyone. For Kendrick's parents, the official explanation did not answer all of their concerns. They believed important details required further examination. They wanted a closer look at how the scene had been handled. They wanted more information about the evidence, and they wanted outside experts to review the findings. The disagreement between Kendrick's family and investigators began almost immediately. It was not a disagreement about whether Kendrick had died. Everyone knew that. The disagreement was about how he died, and whether the first investigation had considered every possible explanation. As the case continued, attention began moving towards specific details. Small pieces of information that would later become major points of debate. The condition of the body, the location of evidence, the timeline inside the school, the actions of investigators after Kendrick was found. In any investigation, details can become important, but in a case where the official conclusion is questioned, every detail receives even more attention. The case also gained interest because of the unusual circumstances surrounding Kendrick's death. A 16-year-old student, inside his own school, found in a location connected to athletics, a place that should have been familiar and safe. The story quickly spread beyond Valdosta. Local media began reporting on the case. Then national attention followed. People across the country became interested in what happened inside the Lowndes High School gym. As more people learned about the case, different interpretations began forming. Some believed the investigation showed a tragic accident, a teenager who made a dangerous decision that ended in a heartbreaking outcome. Others believed the circumstances deserved more investigation. They felt the official explanation left too many unanswered issues. The growing public attention changed the case. It was no longer only a local tragedy. It became a national discussion about investigations, evidence, and trust. But before outside investigators, lawyers, and federal agencies became involved, the first investigation had already created the foundation for everything that followed. A conclusion had been reached. A family had rejected that conclusion, and the disagreement between those two sides would continue for years. Because in the Kendrick Johnson case, the biggest battle was not only over what happened inside the gym, it was over whether the truth had been fully discovered. As Kendrick's family continued searching for answers, the case moved into a new and more complicated phase. The questions surrounding the investigation became just as important as the original tragedy itself. The focus was no longer only on what happened inside the gym. It was now about how the investigation was handled afterward, what evidence was collected, what evidence was preserved, and whether every possible explanation had truly been examined. For Kendrick's parents, every unanswered question represented another reason to continue looking deeper. They did not see themselves as people refusing to accept reality. They saw themselves as parents trying to understand how their son died. And, for them, accepting an explanation they did not believe would mean giving up on Kendrick. Over the following years, different agencies reviewed parts of the case. The FBI examined information connected to the investigation. The Department of Justice also reviewed allegations surrounding Kendrick's death. But after examining the available evidence, federal authorities did not bring criminal charges. No suspect was arrested, no person was convicted, no courtroom ever delivered the final answer that many people expected. The official conclusion remained the same. Kendrick Johnson died as a result of an accident. But the controversy surrounding the case did not disappear. Because for many people, the absence of criminal charges did not automatically remove every doubt. And for others, the repeated reviews of the case supported the belief that investigators had reached the correct conclusion from the beginning. This is what made Kendrick Johnson's story so difficult. It became a case where facts, interpretations, and emotions collided. A case where the same evidence created completely different conclusions, depending on who was looking at it. Years later, Kendrick's name continues to appear in discussions about unexplained deaths and controversial investigations. Documentaries, videos, and online discussions have introduced his story to millions of people who never knew about it before. But behind every theory and every debate, there is something that should never be forgotten. A teenager lost his life, a family lost their son, and a community lost someone they knew. Kendrick Johnson was 16 years old. He had friends, he had goals, he had an entire future ahead of him, a future that ended inside a high school gym on a day that started like any other. Maybe someday, new evidence will provide answers that have remained hidden. Maybe future investigations will reveal details that were missed. Or maybe this case will remain one of those mysteries where people continue searching for certainty that may never come. Because sometimes the hardest cases are not the ones where there is no evidence. Sometimes they are the ones where the evidence exists, but people cannot agree on what it means. And that is why the story of Kendrick Johnson continues, not because it is only about how a young man died, but because it is also about the people left behind trying to understand why. A mystery can end in a courtroom. A mystery can end with an arrest. A mystery can end with a confession. But sometimes, a mystery simply remains. And Kendrick Johnson's case remains one of those stories that continues to leave people asking the same question: what really happened? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to support the channel, consider subscribing, leaving a like, or sharing this video with someone who might find it interesting. It only takes a few seconds of your time, but it helps me more than you might think. I know this is usually the part of videos that people skip, and I do it too sometimes. But creating these stories takes a lot of research, writing, editing, and hours of work behind the scenes. So even a simple like or subscription makes a real difference and helps me continue creating more documentaries like this. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next investigation.